Welcome to Talk World Radio, a half-hour discussion of politics as if the people mattered. I'm David Swanson. This week on Talk World Radio, we are talking about U.S. threats and acts of war against Venezuela. Speaking with us from Venezuela is Gabriel Aguirre, who is Latin America organizer for World Beyond War, where I also work. Gabriel is from Venezuela, but is often in Colombia. He is now in Venezuela, and he has long been an activist and advocate for peace, social justice, international solidarity, and human rights. Gabriel, thank you for joining Talk World Radio.
Hi, David. Thank you once again for having me and for inviting me to your radio show.
Very glad to, and I know you prefer Spanish, so thank you for doing this in English. What is happening right now in Venezuela? What is it like to live there? What is life like for people living in Venezuela?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me once again to your space. And of course, it's an important radio show that for peace activists around the world. Well, to answer this question, because we don't have so many time to make this, I would like to begin saying that we are conducting this interview at a very particular moment for the destiny of the Venezuelan people and in general for the peoples of Latin Americans. As you know, Venezuela is a country nestled in the heart of the South America, has witnesses of numerous attempts by the U.S. government to take the control, in order to gain the access to Venezuela vast strategic resource, including oil, talking about gas, talking about gold, talking about coltan, water, rare earths, biodiversity, etc. Many of you know already that the U.S. government has deployed 50,000 U.S. military troops in the Caribbean, belonging to different branches of the U.S. Armed Force, including warships such as the world's largest aircraft carrier, the Gerald Ford, fighter planes, nuclear-powered submarines, missile launchers under the command of the South Commander and the Fourth Fleet. And that's very important to make mentions. I would like to mention also that since 2008, peace movements have strongly opposed the presence for this Fourth Fleet in the Caribbean at the time that the U.S. government justified the presence of the Fourth Fleet in this area under the pretext that they will provide support for rescue and relief operations in the event of the natural disasters, such as hurricanes, earthquakes, etc. The truth is that the U.S. governments like to impose militaries on the war was completely exposed when the carry out of these actions uses precisely the Fourth Fleet. And the U.S. Has concentrated 20% of its navy in these regions to threaten an attack on Venezuela, and they are declaring this situation every time. Now, look, David, the U.S. government has told us that the reason it has mobilized this entire army is to the struggle against the drug trafficking, against the transnational crime. I want to clarify these facts, and very important to clear, saying the following: all those who made any doubts about this issue, mainly people within the United States, according to the 2025 report by the United Nations about drugs, they are saying that Venezuela is not a drug-producing country, and it's important to say that the 99% of the drugs that are coming from the Latin American to Europe and the US is not by the South Caribbean, it's around by the Pacific Ocean. The countries that are producing drugs is Ecuador, is Colombia, is Peru, but not Venezuela. and also the problem that they are trying to make this false war about drugs, which is another topic of the radio show because it's a very extensive this issue. It's not about the cocaine. It's not about the cannabis. Especially it's about the opioid. It's the fentanyl. I don't know, is it the correct word in English? No. So, and this problem, especially, which is a opioid, and that for many years, pharmaceutical companies in the U.S. told the American people that they not cause any kind of addictions. So, and the truth, if it's the government of the U.S. want to solve the drug problem, it should start with the pharmaceutical companies based in the United States. So under this argument, the US has carried out more than 20 bombings of boats on the pretext that they were transporting drugs, killing almost 100 people was transporting, and these are extrajudicial killings and summary executions, which must be investigated by the international human rights organizations, like the Human Rights Council, for example, and other international organizations that they are defending the human rights. Even if this situation is true, they need to investigate and don't make this killer in the South Caribbean. Well, you know that this deployment is starting at 14 on August, okay? Since they have continued to reinforce the militarization in the regions. But there is something, and I think it's important to mention, David, especially that the past month, the US government has taken up its max and developed its true intentions, which are none other than oil. They cease to oil chips, oil navy from Venezuela with oil, and they take this oil. And in one declaration from President Donald Trump, say that all of this they will maintain the oil, and they will take the chips from for US. So despite the people's especially to respond about what is the situation for the people in Venezuela. Well, in general, our people always being lovers of peace. Our country is a nation that has not been at war for more than 200 years. We have never been involved in military conflicts of any kinds. So our people are accustomed to living in tranquility and calm. These days, we have been the victims of a very intensive psychological campaign. The US government have used social media, the internet, televisions, and radio to tell us that the war is imminent, that they are going to devastate our country, that not has a single person that will be left alive after the military attacks. Despite our people are going about their daily activities, working, studying, and other preparing for the upcoming Christmas and New Year celebrations. And now, if there is one thing that I think is important to mention, is that more than 29% of Venezuela living in the country don't want to work. They might or may not agree with the government, but they all share the same sentiment. They don't know war. Okay, no, they want to sell their sovereign, the independence, their right to the self-determination or their territorial integrity. I think this is tremendously important to mention, because there is almost a total rejections of any idea of war in the country. I'm right here in Caracas, as you mentioned, and yesterday. I saw our children playing in the parks, playing sports, and the first thing that I asked myself was, don't our people have the right to live in peace? The United States, as the main promoter of the war's in the world intends to put an end to the peace and tranquility in our country. They begin with the destabilization actions, then intensify them with sanctions, and now they are trying to intend to end this through the war. So we have this right. Our people have this right. Our children have these rights. Our older people have these rights. And it's that I can tell you about it.
I think I should mention just two things, Gabriel. One is that even if all of the lies and stories about the drugs and the drug trade and the drug ships were 100% true, it would provide zero justification for killing anybody, for threatening war, for bombing a country. And so when we say the drugs really come from Colombia and Ecuador and Peru, that does not mean that the United States should go attack Colombia and Ecuador and Peru. It's no excuse whatsoever. It's just what Marco Rubio and Donald Trump want to talk about, but it has nothing to do with justifying war. And secondly, I oppose the United States government. I think the entire United States government should be locked up in prison, but I do not want a foreign country bombing the United States. And so whatever people think of the government of Venezuela and whether they're right or not in what they think about the government of Venezuela, there's no justification for bombing the people of Venezuela. It's just not relevant. But the United States has been harming the people of Venezuela for a long time. And a lot of that is through sanctions. And now on the top of the sanctions, you have a no-fly zone, you have a blockade, you have these pirates of the Caribbean chasing oil ships and stealing the oil. What has been the impact of all of that on the people of Venezuela?
Yeah, I will talk a little bit about this. You know that the country, since Venezuela is a country that since the democratic and popular process began in 1998, the U.S. has gradually begun to impose sanctions, demonstrating its disagreement with Venezuela's policy of defending its sovereignty and breaking away from the dependence. But it was not until 2014 that the Obama administration signed an executive order that maybe remember designating Venezuela as an unusual and extraordinary threat to the foreign policy and the national security of the United States. Since then, more than 1,073 sanctions have been imposed, according to the most recent report by the Venezuela Anti-Blocks Observatory, which is responsible for systematizing this information. We could spend a lot of time talking about this topic, but I will say that the sanction imposed on Venezuela had a single objective, is to strangle the economy and force change regimes. The sanctions cut off the 99% of the country's income, closing the Republic's bank account, disqualifying the signatures of the main representative of the Venezuelan government, including the President of the Republic, sanctioning the country's main oil company like PDVSA, sanctioning oil tankers and the country's aircraft. What they did with the sanctions was terrible. Look, David, when the COVID-19 pandemic prevented Venezuela from importing vaccines, medicines, and food, this is the result in the deaths of the thousands of Venezuelans. They stole the country's money, they putting in the foreign banks. They stole the Venezuelans' main refinery abroad, which name is Citgo in the U.S., located in the U.S. But by the way, now they have to intend to reissue a much harsher air and naval blockade that affects the daily lives of the Venezuelans in a deliberate action of war, and that they are violating the most basic norms of the international law. Trump ordered these blockades by air and by sea against Venezuela for these days, many people visit their families and relatives at this time of the years. But the international airlines were ordered not to use the Venezuelan airspace, which of course caused many international um, airlines feeling sanctions and pressure for the U.S. government to stop flying to Venezuela and suspend their flight, leaving many people in a very difficult personal situation in Spain, in Madrid, in Bogota, in Colombia. He also ordered a naval blockade, again violated international law and the right for free maritime circulations. And after that, as mentioned earlier, two oil tankers carrying oil from Venezuela were stolen by US. So we are facing with one of the most dangerous precedents, as the president of another country can order the blockade of another country airspace and naval space. We are undoubtedly facing a serious situation which must be investigated and sanctioned by the international organizations. The US cannot assume the role of the war police, but like in the past, we say that the US trying to present for other countries like the police, the war police. But I will say that they change this phrase and prefer to say the role of the neighborhood. This is the truth. This is the behavior of the foreign policy for the state of the US, because I have mentioned several occasions that its foreign policy is a gangster policy. It's true. Now, without a doubt, the death of oil tanker will cause completely instability on the global oil market. Venezuela is a reliable oil supplier and has the world's largest oil reserves, which more than 3 billion barrels of oil. This is precisely what Donald Trump's administration wants. And we need to say this again, and once again, because sometimes the people forget that Venezuela is the largest reserves of oil around the world. That's true.
We are speaking with Gabriel Aguirre, who is Latin America organizer at World Beyond War. Gabriel, what is the situation like politically in Venezuela? Who supports what? And how is the latest wonderful Nobel Peace Prize laureate doing? And what is she up to?
Well, first of all, we are facing a very complex situation where all the democratic sectors in the country reject these aggressions, including the sectors of the democratic oppositions, which despite this disagree with the governments oppose this. So all this aggression has produced an internal unity among many sectors whose goals is the defense of peace and national defense. It's not important even if they are agree or not with the government. All the people, all the political internal sector says that we don't want war, we don't the destroy of our country. So in previous years, this might have been complicated, but there is no way to show that there are a large sector in the country that support the idea of bombing the country. And this is more or less the political situation. Of course, you can find people outside of Venezuela that they are agree with the idea to military invasions against Venezuela, to agree with the idea, not only with a bombing. I was talking with an organizations in Canada the last week, and I say even they are agree with the US launch a nuclear bombs against Venezuela and disappear the country. Even they are agree with this. They are declaring in some times about this. Yes, because I'm living in Canada, I don't have any problem. I don't have family in Venezuela. I'm Venezuela, but I don't have family in Venezuela. I don't care, even if the U.S. government launch a nuclear bombs against Venezuela and disappear this country, because this country is taken by the criminal, by the corruption, by the etc. 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 You know. So, but I found this question very very amusing, especially about the Peace Prize. Perhaps many people don't know that, but a couple of weeks ago, someone from Venezuela received the Nobel Peace Prize. I prefer don't say the name because I think it's not important. But in a decision that was widely questioned and denounced by the peace advocates, including condemnation for the other Nobel Peace Prize winners from the region, such as Adolfo Pérez Esquivel from Argentina, who, upon learning of this, wrote a letter to her that, I recommend to read this letter. Well, this woman who received the Nobel Peace Prize was involved in a series of actions in the country that ended in violence and unfortunate death of Venezuela in 2000. For example, I was talking times in 2014. She organizing a plan that called by La Salida, the exit. In 2017, she joined a violent protest called Las Guarimbas. In 2019, she asked Benjamin Netanyahu, a war criminal currently under investigation by criminal court, to help Venezuela, even if they had mean a military invasions of Venezuela. That the same year she called for the application for the Inter-American Treaty of Reciprocal Military Treaty, that is a military treaty for regional military treaty from the OEA. And she took up the position as ambassador for Panama, another country, to call for these military interventions. Anyone with a common sense will think that when she received the Nobel Peace Prize, would lead her to take a much more moderate stance towards Venezuela. But the opposite has happened. The opposite has happened. Every time she makes a new statement, she shows that she's agreed with the military invasion of Venezuela. She even said that recently, interview, that a military invasion about Venezuela will be an act of love. I'm not lying about this. You can search by Google or any other that you prefer to show this interview. So we can expect nothing from the Nobel Peace laureate. On the contrary, for those who think and work for peace, it's a source of great shame and disrespect that this person has received this award, which demonstrated the disrepute of the award for many years. That is why we need to defend other peace prizes, such as one awarded by War Beyond War to the war abolisher, of the one that you received for peace in the past, Dave, in 2018, I think. These are true peace prizes that recognize the work of all the peace advocated. Incidentally, for example, Trump is upset because he wants the Nobel Peace Prize for these years. And I agree that they should award it him for the next year. So that is the dispute of this prize becomes even more evidence. It was perhaps born with the good intentions, but ended up being a political manipulation to influence certain political context. So I'm totally agree for the next year, Trump received the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't have problem with that.
Well, it has become clearer and clearer that it is a Nobel War Prize, and it has become clearer and clearer that when you threaten a country because you want to overthrow the government, it strengthens the local support for that government. It does the exact opposite almost every time, if not every time, of what you claim to be trying to do. And we just see these things confirmed over and over, and yet they continue. We don't have very many minutes left. Gabriel Aguirre, what has been the response around Latin America to Trump's belligerence, to Trump's threatening of Venezuela?
Okay, very quickly, I can tell you that the peoples of Latin America fully understand what this aggression means. That is not just about Venezuela, although we have spent a lot of time here talking about Venezuela. But David, the truth is that this aggression is against all the peoples of Latin America. Something very dangerous has just been published, which is the new U.S. security doctrine, where they reaffirm the Monroe Doctrine, that you have a very important, very clear book. They refer the Monroe Doctrine, like Latin America is the backyard of the U.S. The idea of the good neighbor policy is now a thing of the past. It is clear that we are facing one of the most aggressive petty and supremacist force of the foreign policy, because it's based on the, like I said, on the idea of the Latin American is the backyard of the U.S. In fact, the White House spokesperson Trump have said this so repeatedly, and the people, Latin Americans, are organizing in different campaigns, like the American Song of Peace campaign, of which we are part. In addition, together with other regional organizations, we have promoted many activities to denounce the military bases, to call for the dismantle of the South Commander, to oppose the military exercise in the regions, and to demand to the NATO's withdrawal from the continent. Like my T-shirt says that no to NATO, no to World War III. And of course, I invite the people to buy this T-shirt in the website of War Beyond War. There have also been several meetings of the social movements, such as El Acto Social, which is a very powerful initiative that brings together various movements and carry out violent actions, protests against these aggressions. So we are working in different areas. Yes, we are working in different areas, even about the anti-militarist movements. So finally, I will say that we need to try to increase the mobilizing. We need to try to increase the solidarity. We need to increase our work, and we have time to stop this stupid war against a country in Latin America. We have time to do more in that way.
We have to try, and Gabriel Aguirre is doing a lot of wonderful work in Latin America. The U.S. public is against this war. We're going to have a webinar at World Beyond War together with International Peace Bureau on January 7th. There's a petition at worldbeyondwar.org. There's a delivery of that petition to the U.S. Congress in Washington. You can join us on January 14th. We're putting up billboards in Washington, D.C. We've got a local resolution you can pass through your town or city. We're going to have a global day of actions everywhere on January 17th. Try to stop this war. Gabriel Aguirre, thanks for everything you're doing and for coming on Talk World Radio.
Thanks, David, and thanks once again.
This is Talk World Radio. I'm David Swanson. Take action at rootsaction.org. Help end war at worldbeyondwar.org. Read or listen to today's Peace Almanac entry at peacealmanac.org. All past shows can be heard at talkworldradio.org. Talk World Radio is produced in Charlottesville, Virginia, and syndicated by Pacifica Network. There is no way to peace. Peace is the way.